going to talk about how you can build your natural charismatic brand. How do you be memorable in the marketplace? Because for most of us, in hearing the businesses that are in the room, you're not the only person that does that. So how do you stand out with your clients? How do you stand out with other businesses so people think of you as the go-to person? So I'm going to start out by telling you just a little bit about myself, not because I love to talk about myself, but because I would not say that I was always memorable. And there were definitely some places where I began to see myself in a different light because of the things that happened. So to be really candid, I'm 54. When I was in high school, I was the super brainiac nerd. And I had 3 friends, Catherine, Debbie, and Claudia, and that was it. Senior year, my best friend Catherine went to prom with the boy that I had the crush on for a whole year. So this was my life. I don't think anyone would have said, yeah, Gretchen's particularly memorable. And I actually, it's a fun fact about me, started my life as an archaeologist. So when I was 16, I went to an archaeological field school run by Northwestern in southern Illinois. And I got there, and there were, 16, 18, 20 of us, and everybody liked me. Now, I used to think that there was actually something wrong with me, but my parents were going to tell me, because how devastating would it be to have your mom and dad sit you down and go, you're fundamentally flawed, and that's why nobody likes you, and no, you don't have any friends. And what I realized was it wasn't me. It was that whole mean girl mentality of my school. And all of a sudden, here were all these people that liked me. And the next summer when I went back, the cutest boy in the program dated me all summer. And it was like, how did that happen? Because I'm the person nobody likes. And we'll talk in a little bit about your charismatic archetypes. But I discovered my everyman or everywoman archetype, that person that fits in, that's a member of the community. That was shocking to me. I mean, it sounds really kind of pathetic, doesn't it? That it took something like that to be like, oh, I'm actually a likable person. So fast forward to me being 35. And my kids were both in school, and I started out like, oh, I could bake brownies for the bake sale, the kindergarten bake sale. And then it was like, oh, I think I could run the bake sale. And then it was like, oh, well, I think I could run the flea market for the whole school. And we increased profits by $2,000. We had a $7,000 one-day flea market. That's not too shabby. And that led to me being PTA president in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. And that's like a whole different story, and that would be a whole different training. But people were coming to me and they were saying, you're such a good leader. How do you do that? I think you should run for office. I'm like, what? And this was not how I saw myself. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just do what I do, right? There was something inside me that was coming out, but I couldn't label it. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So that was like my leader archetype coming out. So fast forward about 5 or 6 years later, I was going through a very challenging end of a 19-year marriage with 2 kids involved, and I went to a women's retreat for 3 days. And I'm a coach, so I always like to see what other coaches do. Like, hey, you learn something, you learn some some tricks, some techniques, some distinctions. So this woman is up in the front of the room, and she says, I need 2 volunteers. And I'm like, oh, I'll volunteer. Right, you've probably picked up in the last 3.5 minutes that I'm like going to just jump into the pool. I'll jump off the ledge and knit the parachute on the way down. So another woman volunteers. So we come to the front of the room, and the woman who's running this workshop says, okay, one of you is the interviewer. The other one of you is the expert. So the other woman very quickly says, I'm the interviewer. So I'm like, oh, I'm the expert. So I start, you're like, what would you do, right? What am I an expert in? So my brain's going, and meanwhile, I'm vaguely aware that the woman running the workshop is asking for a one-word suggestion. Sports, so it's football, excellent. Insect, it's a butterfly. Gretchen, you are an expert in butterfly football. What? Wait a minute, like there are all these things I can tell you I'm an expert in. What is butterfly football? So they start the exercise. This other woman is interviewing me, and she's like, so Gretchen, can you tell me, like, what is butterfly football? How is it different from the NFL? And it's like, because I'm 54, Jane Curtin, Gilda Radner has taken over my mouth. And I'm like, well, butterfly football is not like men's football that's all, and knock them down. I said, we're all about agility and speed, you know, kind of like float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And I'm like, who is putting these words in my mouth? And she asks another question. So are there like famous stars in butterfly football? And I find myself saying, no, we don't have monarch butterflies in butterfly football. I mean, you might say we're all monarch butterflies because women are very collaborative. So I'm having this out-of-body experience of me being there saying these things and people are laughing hysterically, but I'm not the funny person. So the rest of this conference, I'd meet people, because this was day one. I'm like, oh, hi, I'm Gretchen. They're like, oh, I remember you. You're the butterfly football lady. I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess so. So this was the first uncovering of my jester archetype, which now is expressed. I'm a comedy performer at Dallas Comedy House. I'm a member of 2 improv troupes. One is an over 40 troupe. That's very radical because most people that do improv are young men under 30. And then my other group is a very small all-women's group, and we're women in STEM. So we have an IT PhD engineer who just got back from visiting factories in China, and we have an actuary, and we have me, because back in my earlier days, I was a data nerd. So anyway, this is like uncovering these different pieces about myself. So why am I telling you this? Because this isn't unique to me. Everyone in this room has a different way of being charismatic. You have things you haven't discovered yet, or you have things, like for me, that are under layer upon layer upon layer of crap. All these negative messages, people that told you what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, and what isn't done for somebody like you. And when you clear all of that away, it allows your authentic self to come out. I would not have predicted that I would be the me today at 54, even 5 years ago. All these things have come out. So what we're going to do today is to explore what those things look like. So I want to start out, I've sort of set a foundation, hopefully you somewhat buy into that there's something in you that might be uncovered, that you might not be aware of. Why are you here? Why do you want to be memorable? Why does it matter to you if you have a charismatic business presence? Alma?
Well, for example, I represent a great product line, so I don't have to worry about the products selling themselves. What I am always focused on is selling me. So I'm selling the relationship that people want to have with me, so that they get together with me again and again instead of going to a website. So that's what I want to learn, is how to be memorable in that sense.
And that's such a good point of mostly people do businesses with people. There are a million Mary Kay beauty consultants. What is it that's going to make you unique and memorable so that your customers keep coming back and they refer you out? Does anyone else have a reason for being here?
Similar to what Hum was talking about, the Legal Shield is a wide number of Legal Shield associates, and a lot of people that are very successful in team building, and so that's one of the things I want to do. Is I've always been fairly successful at the corporate sales environment, direct selling, but I'm looking for ways to make me more memorable so I can become a better team leader.
Right, and that's a really important part. Later on, I'll tell you a little story about being a leader in a team and how being memorable, being able to engage people. Because, can you think of anybody that's memorable that was boring? Has anyone inspired by a boring leader? No. So that's a really good point of the importance of that as a leader of a team or an organization. And did I see another? Okay. 1, 2, 3. The floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm different because I'm just myself. And, I'm not under a company or anything like that. I have to be memorable in the fact that the internet's not available when you need me. Or the computer doesn't turn on, or you have to, have something there that you can remember. But then the thing I felt going in was, I know more than most other technicians I've worked with in different areas that they may not have gone into. So I want people to benefit from that expertise so they they know, hey, Mark can do the networking stuff and the hardware and fix my application. So,
Right, and so part of being memorable is sharing your expertise, but in a way that you don't come off as arrogant. Because can anyone think of someone that's arrogant that they just love to spend time with? Oh, no hands are going up. How about you out there in Facebook land? Anyone like people that are arrogant? You would raise your hand.
So I'm a real estate agent, and there's tons of those, as we all
Yes.
know. But people don't buy houses every day. So I want to be memorable when I interact with my past clients and then as I'm meeting people, because when it comes time to buy a house, I want them to remember me, not the other realtor in the group, not the other realtor that lives over there.
Right, so whether you're in an organization or you're on your own, when there's a lot of competition, it's that much more important to be memorable and to stand out. And I think there's some things that I would hope, I don't want to come off as arrogant, would resonate with you as we move through this. And finally,
How do you, for me, it would be how do you overcome, on first impressions, how do you overcome some things that would be construed as misconceptions on myself or a person, right? That would be my key takeaway for me.
right, and that I think gets to a piece of authenticity. That, when you are who you are and you're very clear on that, then you're able to bring that out. And we'll be touching on some of that. But what it reminds me of is a friend back in D.C. who was also with Mary Kay, and she was on her third or fourth car. And her thing was, you only get one chance to make a good first impression. And I have a client who is going through some very difficult personal things. But when she's out in a group like this, she's a mess. And she's a coach, and it's like nobody is going to hire a coach who falls apart in a networking group, because you would know as a coach that part of what you bring to it is that strength and that resilience. So are you raising your hand?
Yeah.
We'll give you the last comment and we'll move on.
Not only momentum, but also as a leader, how do you become more attractive?
Yes. Exactly. So what we're going to do now is we've talked a little bit about how hopefully by now you've bought into that every one of us in this room has a natural innate charisma, and either it's had the opportunity to express itself or it hasn't. And if it hasn't, well, then now's the time. Today's the day. It's Friday. What else are we going to do? It's raining outside. So I just want to take a brief minute to say what I personally believe charisma is not. And not to be political, but it's the quickest example I could think of. We have two major political candidates. They have fame, they have power, they have money, they have influence, and nobody likes them. Nobody trusts them. I would argue to you that with all that fame, power, money, and influence, they don't have charisma, because charisma is all about drawing people to you. People that are charismatic want to have people want to be with them. They want to talk with them. They want to engage with them. And when you look at how those two particular leaders run their organizations, they buy loyalty. They have loyalty because of fear. People are not magnetically drawn to either of those candidates. So I don't want that to be a political statement, but I don't know that there's anyone in the United States and possibly in major cities on planet Earth that does not recognize those two people. So they're kind of iconic. And so I don't want anyone to feel like I can't be memorable because I don't have money, or I can't be memorable because I'm not powerful or I'm not famous, because they have nothing to do with each other. So what we're going to do now, if you look on your table, you have a stapled page that looks like this. And for the people out there in TV land, you can email me at Gretchen, GRETCHEN, at twistdfw.com, and I'd be happy to send this to you. So, okay, they can post that, even better. So I'm 54, I have old eyes. We're going to spend a few minutes just briefly walking through these archetypes. And what I want you to do as we're briefly going through these is to circle the one or maybe two or three if you have to, but ideally one or two that most seem like you, that people would say, oh yeah, That's how I would describe him, or that's how I would describe her. And these archetypes are based on the work of psychologist Carl Jung. He did this work, I think, about 100 years ago. And then there's been a lot of work, if you know the author Joseph Campbell, who also did a lot of work in archetypes. And why I like this approach to charisma is that these are archetypes you find in every single society known to humankind. Every society has a leader. Every society has a jester, the lover, the warrior, the hero. All of those people exist so that if your brand becomes a global brand, you can interact with people in any culture. And we're a very diverse society. These are our identities that everyone will recognize. So if you're dealing with people from different countries here, it will be recognizable. And it ties in, I'm also a writer, it ties in to storylines, to marketing storylines. There are iconic stories about heroes, about creators and inventors and leaders. So when you create your authentic charisma brand based on archetypes, that leaks into how you market and sell your business. And what you create is an authentic presence for everything that you do. So the first is the caregiver or the nurturer. It's often said as the mother figure. It's someone who's really focused on serving others, helping others, often selflessly. So if you think about Mother Teresa, Florence Nightingale, you think about Ben Carson. Now, I know he's been a political candidate, but I've seen him speak. He's a surgeon, and in retirement, he and his wife have founded an amazing nonprofit to provide books and libraries for children in low-income schools, and they go themselves to open these libraries. Then there's every man or every woman. I told you a little bit about that. That's about belonging in community. It's the united we stand, all for one and one for all. So if you think about Nelson Mandela or Jimmy Carter or Minnie Pearl from the old, the Grand Ole Opry, okay? These were people that kind of any of us can identify with because they're every man, every woman. Then there's the innocent or the optimist. This is the person who kind of needs to be a little bit sheltered. They just want to be happy. They don't want anybody to worry. They want everybody to know that everything is okay. So if you think of the young woman Malala who was attacked by, it wasn't ISIS, it was one of the other groups. But anyway, it's a middle-aged moment. If you think about Marilyn Monroe, this heavy sexualized person who was very, very innocent and had trouble with the ways of the world, or Princess Diana, the lover. So these are people where they believe that people need people. They want to bring love and connection into the world. They leave people feeling loved and cherished. So if you think about Pope Francis or the Dalai Lama, or actually if you've read stuff about Mary Kay Ash and her commitment to the community and to the women that she was bringing up as she built her company. There's the magician. That's also sometimes the shaman. These are people that are all about transformation, but it's about change that starts at home. If I'm going to create change, I have to be that light and bring that into the world. So if you think about Walt Disney, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these are people who are changing the world, and they're also changing themselves. I see you have Bill Gates there twice. So the next is the sage or the expert. This is somebody who's all about learning and knowledge and wisdom and people finding their own truths. So if you think about what is it with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's a Supreme Court justice. And yet there's this whole thing about the notorious RBG. My daughter's a lawyer. So how did it get cool to be a Supreme Court justice? But it is because she's very magnetic. Barack Obama, whether you like him or not, has a very magnetic personality that's really founded on his knowledge. If you turn the page, there's the creator or the innovator. That's Steve Jobs, Andy Warhol, J.K. Rowling, people that believe that expression and creativity are really important. If you can dream it, do it. And they leave people feeling amazed and inspired. Well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. There's the explorer or the individualist. This is the person who's willing to take a risk and play life big. They don't want to be put in a box. This may or may not surprise you. This is my top archetype because there's an inventory I use. This would be Sally Ride. the astronaut who was killed when the Challenger blew up, Jane Goodall, Oprah. These are people who are very much their own people. They really don't care what people think about them. Then there's the hero. That's kind of self-explanatory. If we think about General Patton, Winston Churchill, Harriet Tubman, who worked freeing the slaves on the Freedom Train, it's all about hard work creating success. It's about if there's a will, there's a way. There's the jester. That's all about having fun, being in the moment, lightening up. So we see obvious people like Steve Martin, the comedian, but Dr. Ruth, the sex doctor, or Lucille Ball. There's the rebel or the revolutionary. So that's people like Martin Luther King, Che Guevara, and I always get her name, Aung San Suu Kyi from Suu Kyi from Myanmar, who really believe that we can achieve change, power to the people, empowering people. And finally, there's the ruler or the leader, and that's the person who really believes in control and order, that people need stability. So there we see people like George Washington, Angela Merkel, or even Vladimir Putin. As you know, all these people have different expressions of these archetypes. So has everyone found the 2 or 3 that kind of resonate with you? Okay, great. So then, if you pull out this other paper, you'll see at the top it has role model 1, 2, 3, and you. So I want you to think about somebody for either that top, sorry, I borrowed yours, that top 1 or 2 or 3 archetypes, and think about someone you know. It doesn't have to be somebody famous. It can be your high school baseball coach. It can be your great Aunt Mabel, anybody that you really admire, that you feel like embodies that charismatic archetype. And then as we go through the next section, what I'm going to ask you to do is to score those people. So we're going to start talking about what are the tools, what are the processes and practices of being charismatic. It's great to know what you're shooting at. What are you going to do to get there? And how are you? I guarantee everybody has areas that are well developed, and everybody, myself included, has areas where there's opportunity for growth and development. So I'll give you just a minute to write those people in. If you can't think of someone, that's okay too. And so as we go down, just score these role models and yourself, A, B, C, and how you feel they match up with what you would give as an A performance. So since we have viewers in Facebook land, I'm going to start slowly into the next section if you're still working on some of your people. So there are really 2 parts to what charismatic people do. At least this is how I think of it. So one of them has to do with our physical body, who we're being. So people think that communication is all about what comes out of your mouth. But what we know from science is that 93% of communication is body language. And that would be a whole different, much longer presentation. But there's a lot that we do with body language that we're often not aware of. So if I stand like this and I tell you, oh, I love that idea. That is a great idea. Is this the body of I love what you're saying? Not at all. And I've noticed this, you see someone, if you're at a meeting, and, for those of you looking at teamwork and leadership, and you see people pulling back, and they're crossing their arms, or they're sitting like this, these are defensive body postures. So it's a clue in that what you're saying is repelling people. It's not drawing people in. Your facial expression, do you smile? My gosh, the value of smiling at people is just immeasurable. And even little babies and little kids get the power of a smile. If you're in a bad mood and you smile, your whole body starts to smile along with it. And I know for other coach in the room, if I'm having a bad day and it's like, oh, I have 4 coaching calls, I will force myself to be like, yes, before I get on the phone, because then I know I bring, hi, how are you? It's Gretchen to the phone, not hi. It's Gretchen, I'm having a bad day. Also, eye contact. And this is something, it's a balance. It can backfire. So when I first started coaching 15 years ago, and I'm trying to be very present, and so I would make really intense eye contact when I was talking in my coach training program, and people would say, oh my gosh, we feel like you're staring us down, or you're like looking into the depth of my soul, and I had to learn to kind of back it off. So be aware of what you're doing. Look at yourself in a mirror when you're practicing stuff. Also, it's something we rarely talk about, but mood and emotion, which would be a whole different topic. How are you out in the world? I mentioned one of my clients. I get she's going through a hard time, but when she brings that into her business, nobody wants to be around her. It's very sad. Even her friends are feeling like we don't want to be around her, because for a year, it's been one negative thing after another. And I get it. I've been there. That comes up a little bit later, but you have to bring your best self. You have to be positive in mood. You have to watch what emotions get triggered, because everything you do in business, somebody's watching. Somebody's making a judgment. You all have made hundreds of judgments about me already. Do you like my hair? You don't like my hair. This jacket, did she really wear that? Those shoes, what I'm saying, you agree, you don't agree. That's the way people are. It's what we do. So you want to, as much as possible, channel those to good judgments. In terms of actual practices that you can do, what can you do to make yourself more charismatic right now, today? And we'll get to that at the very end. Be present. Be a good listener. Have you ever talked to someone and they're like, excuse me a minute, what did they just tell you? They just told you my phone is more important than you. Is that the message you want to convey? And being a good listener, that can backfire too, because when I did my Myers-Briggs training, it's not surprising to anybody in this room that I'm an extrovert. Actually, in Myers-Briggs, it is not possible statistically to be more extroverted than I am. I'm a 30. So I talk to a lot of introverts. So it's like, oh, well, I don't want to overwhelm them with my enthusiasm. So I'd ask a lot of questions. Oh, your business. Oh, your real estate agent. Oh, commercial or residential. Oh, you mentioned you have a son in college. Where is he going? What's he studying? And I realized that I was overwhelming people trying to be a good listener, because extroverts don't want to talk a lot about themselves. They kind of want you to carry the load, and they'll come in when they're ready. So it's a double-edged sword, but, be aware of it. Think about that. Are you listening? If I could take away phones, I would do that in an instant. I'm old enough to remember the days before answering machines. So, hey, but I'm not dead yet. Do you genuinely take an interest in other people and focus on them? And that's part of that introvert story. I genuinely had an interest in people, but I was focusing a little bit too much on them. This is sort of a large topic about building trust quickly. That would be like a whole different topic, but it's really about when you meet someone, they need to leave, and sometimes you only have a minute or two. It's literally the elevator speech. Are they left with the sense that you are authentically who you are? Is everything in alignment? Your body language, your facial expressions. You can't be a scowling coach. You just can't do that. How you make eye contact, how you shake hands, do you smile? What are the words that come out of your mouth? I'm actually working on an MBA, and I generated a very heated conversation about the word control, because I'm taking a course in human behavior, and there's a whole piece on how you control people. I'm like, well, I find that really offensive, So anyway, everything that you say matters. Are you empathetic? It's interesting. We think about empathy as looking at people and say, oh, your mother died. Oh, I'm so sorry. What can I do? Can I bring you a lasagna? And that's easy for most of us. But the harder piece is positive empathy. What do you do when you're the person who, you just lost a big contract, and, your father isn't doing very well, and you're afraid your wife might leave you, and someone's like, I'm so excited, we're buying a new house and taking a cruise, and you want to go, what? I want to take a cruise. Positive empathy. Can you be empathetic for bad things that people are experiencing and the good things? And this is where my friend, the coach, and is just really struggling. She can't be happy for people, not even her friends, and that's not going to get her very far. Can you speak your truths? So I spent 7 years working with post 9/11 military in transition. Used to live in D.C., did a lot of stuff at the Pentagon. I'm a woman. I'm not a veteran. And those are like two huge dings against me. So there was a particular meeting set up by a business colleague who really was supportive of the work I did. So in the room was a 1-star general, retired, who ran an organization, and then a 2-star general who was retired, who knew all of us. So we're sitting at breakfast. It might have even been in a pancake house. And so the 1-star general starts on the, this and that, and it just sort of blurts out of my mouth. I said, well, when you do that, you hurt veterans. Oh, you want to talk about the energy being sucked out of a room? 1-star generals are not accustomed to having civilian chicks call them out. So there's this horrible, awkward silence. And the businessman that set up this meeting to support me in the organization I founded is shooting me daggers. And so it's like tick-tock, tick-tock. And finally, God bless Jim Kelly, who outranked the 1-star general because he had 2 stars and a lot of battle credibility. He goes, you know, she's right. And actually, that's how I won Jim Kelly's respect. And he became one of my strongest advocates. So people actually respect you when you speak your truths respectfully. I wasn't actually disrespectful to the general. He just wasn't used to having people challenge him because he was a general. Paint a powerful vision. So for our Legal Shield person who's looking at how do you be a good team leader, paint a powerful vision. So I just about 6 weeks ago took over a very large women's networking organization. I was super excited. Wow, there are like almost 80 members. Everyone's telling me, oh, they're going to be so happy you're here. Oh, except they weren't. There were a lot of breakdowns under the former managing director.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Hello, we're back. So paint a powerful vision. So I've just taken over as the managing director of a very large women's networking organization. And what I was told was, oh my gosh, everyone is going to be so excited you're here. And it was like, okay, great. Only I got there and they weren't because there were a lot of breakdowns. And finally what it came to is I'm trying to engage people. One of the members of my leadership team said, we just want you to paint a vision. I was like, okay, I can do that. I'm normally collaborative, but I can do that. So I know we got the 5-minute warning. We're going to skim down. So be humble, deflect attention, give praise, put the spotlight on others. This was one of my most impactful on me learning about myself experiences. I was a team leader of a sales team in a communications program in a very brutally metrics-driven organization. And when I came in, we were rated 0 out of 27. That's a really bad place to be. And so I'm a very, fun person. I started inventing these corporate games. Now we would call it gamification. It's on the internet, but I do human-to-human gamification. So after 3 months, we were at 9 out of 27. That's still not very good. But after 6 months, we were 26 out of 27 possible points. We were in a 3-way tie for the top team globally. We did that all through playing games. But as we move on, the process was that leadership changed to develop leaders within the organization. So leadership went from me to Kimberly. Kimberly used to deliver pizzas. She was not innately a leader, and things kept going very well, and people would pull me aside and say, well, it's really you doing this. You built the foundation. And I was doing things behind the scenes, and it was like, no, I don't need that credit. You go tell Kimberly what a good job she's doing, because I knew who I was as a leader at that point. Kimberly didn't. So charismatic people build up other people. They don't step on other people. Be vulnerable and open. 6 years ago, I lost my second husband to a psychiatric breakdown while I was working with the military. I earned more credibility by, again, not vomiting all over people, but just being open about what was happening and sharing my experience and contextualizing that for these young military wives who are 21, 22. They have a high school education. They have no job experience. They have a couple of babies, and all of a sudden they're thrown out to figure it out on their own. Have a sense of humor. Have you ever met someone who made you laugh that you didn't like, that you didn't want to spend more time with? Be generous and altruistic. I don't know if anyone here is part of BNI. Givers gain. It's a good philosophy. Accept responsibility. Reach across the aisle. Listen to people who you don't agree with. So you have your sheet. Hopefully you've rated everybody. Take a look, and I want you to look for 3 things. And I know we're close to out of time, so I'm going to be around afterwards. I'm happy to have one-on-one conversations with you, or out there in TV land, you can email me. I'm happy to email or arrange a phone call. Think about all of those characteristics of people that are memorable and charismatic. Pick an easy one. Pick one that's really important to your business, and pick one that's a stretch, and write those down. And if you're not quite in a place to do that right now, you can do it later this afternoon or tonight or over the weekend. But, hopefully I didn't come here just to yak at you. Hopefully I came for you to take away something that will be of value in building your business. You didn't just come here to eat lunch and say hello to everybody. So I really encourage you, pick an easy one, pick an important one, pick a hard one, a challenge one, something that's going to stretch you. And then take 3 simple action steps that you can take between now and December 31st. So hopefully the simple one you can just knock out in the next 6 or 8 weeks, and then make some measurable progress on the second one and the third one. So thank you so much for having me here. It's been a pleasure. You've been an excellent audience. I will be around later. Please let me know if there's any way I can support you in your business development. I love working with small business owners and leaders. It's my passion. I hope that shows. Thank you very much.
People are complaining about this rain. It's a gift from God. And remember, the sun is always shining. And the third G is you have to be growing. Emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. Okay?